Hello and welcome to the week 2 video lecture for 3250. Because there is a lot going on this week, let's start first with the collaborative homework. This course is just starting, but already you've been assigned to small groups to work on a group assignment. This is another sort of dress rehearsal to get you ready for project 3, the collaborative report you'll eventually have to write. For this week, however, smaller scale homework assignment called collaborative drafting is a way to learn more about your 3250 peers and how well you may or may not handle group work. The collaborative drafting assignment offers a scenario, just like the purpose and audience homework and project 1 overall. From that one scenario, you and your group have to decide which correspondence type, email, memo, business letter, suits this particular scenario and the audience best. Then you and your group will draft the document together, and only one person from the group will submit it. Because this is a group project, the entire group will be graded the same. However, if you didn't contribute, you will not be graded. Part of any group work for 3250 will always include the group checklist, as you see on the screen. Everyone in the group should contribute at least 2 to 3 parts of this correspondence. I suggest working from a Google Doc or something similar. Then on your finished product, include a checklist, like what you see on the screen, of who contributed at the top of the document. On the screen, you'll also notice on this checklist, one name does not have a check mark. I know it's blurry, but this means that that particular teammate did not contribute to any part of drafting the assignment, and so the team left the space next to their name blank. If you do not contribute to a group assignment for 3250, you will not receive a grade for it, and the checklist helps me keep track. Because this is a group assignment, make sure that everyone has access to your workspace, your Google Doc or whatever, and set a group due date on this accessible workspace so that everyone in the group is aware when the document is being submitted, because that might be different for everybody. So let me explain. Group work in 3250 is eligible for a group due date. For example, even though the assignment is due Friday before 11:59 p.m. Eastern, all of the parts of the assignment should be completed before then, right? So you're not spinning and saying, when are we going to get this done? That's where the group due date comes in, because the team can decide on a separate date and time, maybe like what you see on the screen, that a group decided for Thursday before 11:59 p.m. They're going to finish all the parts. They're going to get all of that done on the Google Doc, and whoever is assigned in that group between y'all is going to submit it. This new due date and time, that's before my due date and time, is at the top of the workspace for everyone to see and acknowledge. And after this day, this group day and time, the document will be proofread, formatted, and submitted, even if it's before my due date and time. All group members are emailed about this new group date and time a few days before the submission date. And then it's a good idea on that same submission date, if it's Thursday, email them one more time. This provides all team members a chance to submit their work while providing accountability and expectations in the event one or more teammates does not submit their parts. You should have a backup plan to finish the document in case this happens, as it might. I mean, it's pretty rare, but it happens. Finally, to find your groups, click on the People button on Canvas on that left-hand side menu, then click on Collaborative Drafting Groups. It should be a tab or something at the top of the page. Find your name amongst all the groups. Email your group members to start setting up a collaborative process in a Google Doc. I will never facilitate your group communications. Although, please reach out with specific questions on group dynamics. Or if you just maybe you want some advice or something. Additionally, this homework assignment cannot be submitted late. Ooh, okay, now let's discuss more about the rough draft of Project 1, which is due at the end of week 2. To start, let's just think for yourself of recapping the scenarios. For instance, there's the first scenario, which is more cultural and kind of construction based. The second scenario, which is arguably the most customer service based scenario. And then the third, which is really anchored in training and maybe communication issues. Consider what you like and dislike about all of those scenarios. Studying the scenarios again can be helpful. Remember that professional tests are not always going to be objectively interesting, right? Because the scenarios themselves are not really interesting per se, but internally, there are always professional problems that require innovative solutions, whether they're interesting or not. For your chosen scenario, consider purpose. Why do you want to write? What is the end goal in communicating? What can be accomplished and how can it be stated quickly, articulately, and persuasively using logos and ethos? Of course, consider your audience. Once you know what you want to accomplish, consider exactly who is going to read it, as you'll need to mention their name, and think of how best to convince this person and how to convey timeliness, kairos. This can hinge on tone, how you're saying what you're saying. For the purposes of this class, there are 3 different types of tone we'll discuss, and they're all useful in different ways. Some are better than others, and some are better left in small doses, if at all. Consider what tone means in a professional setting. You can apply active voice when you're trying to call attention to something like the picture of the dog that you see on the screen. On the left-hand picture of the dog, the active voice sounds better than the right-hand version, which is using passive voice. Passive voice has a tendency to sound convoluted and pretentious. In this case, the passive voice sentence is a lot more awkward to read. Someone less familiar with the English language might need to read it multiple times before fully understanding it. However, it's very appropriate passive voice when you're creating rules, regulations, or legal writing for a business. In the rules and regulations picture on the lower half of the screen, you can see how passive voice works better there because it comes off as less accusatory. It's using more words, certainly, but being less blunt for this type of professional writing works better than active voice. Use passive voice in any situation where you want to sound like an objective third party. Examples of this could include a scientific report, a company handbook, or a contract. Active voice is the better choice for marketing collateral designed to engage and excite the reader. Oftentimes, any type of aggression in professional communications should be avoided. This leads to, oh, I skipped something. So yes, part of tone means remembering things like goodwill and apologizing in professional communication. So let's start with goodwill, which is positive regard, trust, and mutual understanding. You build goodwill with respect, empathy, and sincere interactions. These tenets will foster strong work relationships and effective workplace communications. Use goodwill in a practical way by maintaining that respect, enacting collaborations in the workspace. Listen actively, offer help to your coworkers when and if you can, and be transparent in your communications. Build trust and rapport to enhance teamwork, negotiations, and client relationships internally and externally. Likewise, apologizing in professional communication is important and kind of somewhat tied into goodwill. Apologizing acknowledges mistakes, it shows your accountability, and it can preserve relationships. Apologizing in the workplace can demonstrate you're professional. And it can, again, keep that trust. And ultimately, it can promote a positive work culture by addressing conflicts and resolving any issues with effective communications. Sometimes in the professional world, apologizing is necessary. When you apologize, like what you see on the screen, all those kinds of do's and don'ts, you should avoid blame, avoid excuses, avoid being insincere. Instead, you should genuinely express your remorse without being overly flowery. You should take responsibility, and really, the apology is better if it's couched in a solution. You should be looking to make amends and using empathetic tones, but apologizing in a timely fashion because that will demonstrate you have integrity and you're looking to strengthen the relationship, the working relationship. When you're drafting your correspondence, everything that we just talked about with tone is as important as the audience that you're addressing. Who you're writing to dictates how you're going to write the response, the tone, and what the audience needs to know, the purpose. The audience will also dictate which type of document will suit their needs and the purpose of the communication. On the screen is the password for the day 2 assignment for week 2 that is asking for it. You don't need to include this password with every assignment. And the password is Physical, which is a really engaging show on Apple Plus. Definitely not for everybody, but it's a great show if you like stories set in the 80s. Moving on with documents and common usage. A superior or a colleague might expect a memo or an email to be updated, whereas a client may expect a formal letter or a short email, depending on the purpose. If there's an issue with an employee, responding with a letter or memo might meet the seriousness of the moment. And I might have already reminded you of this, but the checklist that you see on the screen, it's kind of do's and don'ts for different correspondence. It's not perfect. They're not rules that you necessarily have to perfectly follow, but like any sort of rule that exists, you can bend the rule a little bit without breaking it. So find this link in the modules and it could help you as you're thinking about which correspondence type for your project 1 scenario that you chose. Because project 1, the rough draft is due this Sunday, let's talk about completing a rough draft in 3250. Some students interpret a rough draft as I only need to complete 80%, or it can look really shitty and I'm still going to get a grade because it's a rough draft. Then that same student is confused when they get a less than stellar grade. In 3250, I grade concerning assignment outcomes, and you will receive the grade that you earn. Thus, when you submit a rough draft for 3250, I encourage you to review the assignment guidelines, attempt them, review your work, confer with a tutor that will also get you extra credit, then you save and submit. For project 1, attempting the full range of the assignment. And that means you're thinking about design, like emails have subject lines, memos have headers, letters have addresses. Your attempt at design at this stage doesn't have to be pretty. Don't waste time over type style, use of color, or fake company logos, but show me that you're attempting the basic design templates of your document, that you're attempting problem solving, goodwill, and that you've completed the documents, and we'll go from there. Now let's review the week 2 assignments, particularly collaborative drafting, and maybe even kind of reviewing more about the project 1 rough draft. So week 2 document series rough draft starts with a small stakes homework assignment about correspondence analysis. It features three documents that you choose from. You don't have to use all 3 of these assignments that say download, or these drafts that say download. You don't have to use all 3. pick one of them. Maybe you pick the email, and then analyze that email for strengths and weaknesses of design, strengths and weaknesses of organization or the flow of ideas, strengths and weaknesses for tone or word choice. 1 or 2 sentences for each of these bullet points is going to be sufficient. If you give me a page for these 3 things, I already know you did not review the video lecture and you're not following assignment instructions. Next, review all 3, scan reading them, just to identify which of the 3 you think is most effective, which one do you think is least effective, and why did you pick those 2 and designate them as such. 1 or 2 sentences for this part. Lastly, pick one of the 3 and rewrite it so that it more effectively accomplishes its goals. For the rewrite, the easiest thing, of course, would probably be which correspondence did you think was least effective? Or maybe because you already broke down the memo or email or whatever, you can understand what might need to be changed to rewrite it and make it better. So that assignment is, again, a small stakes assignment. For week 2, let's get to a bigger assignment, 15 points for collaborative drafting. We talked about it in the video lecture, and the different parts of it go over a lot of what I already discussed, like clicking on the people button to find your group, clicking the collaborative drafting groups tab, uncollapsing the groups until you find your name, and reaching out to your teammates using the inbox. Sometimes words are hard. Once you know your group, you've reached out, or maybe before that, read the scenario. You cannot change the scenario for this assignment in any way, unlike the purpose and audience small stakes homework assignment. But just like any of the scenario-based assignments, please fill in the gaps as you see fit, because the scenario is not perfect and there are some missing details per se. Ultimately, you're producing a document to an old professor of yours to reject a sort of academic business venture. You're rejecting their offer, and based on the scenario and your audience and just the purpose of it, do you think an email, memo, or letter would be most appropriate? Decide with your group, because you only have to draft one correspondence as a team. So decide with your team which type, and then one of y'all go to Google Docs or something and start allocating who is going to do what. At the top of the draft, remind each other, okay, we are, for the scenario, we decided a memo would be best or whatever. And just like the video lecture, this group also decided on a date before my due date to have all of the parts ready on the Google Doc, so they're not worried about, oh, it's Friday and it's 11 and we haven't done anything. This group decided on a due date before that so that they have more control over the situation, more accountability, and they're going to get it done. I'm going to zoom in so we can look at how they allocated the different parts. This is a suggestion. You don't have to do that. There's 3 people per each group. I think 1 or 2 groups might have 4, so you'll have to do things differently. But each group can decide who is going to do what for the document. Like any document, the document can be broken up into parts. A memo, just like an email and a letter or a report, is going to have an intro, a middle part, and a conclusion. And this group decided each person is tackling a different part of that, a paragraph or 2 for each, who knows, whatever the brevity and purpose and design of that document type has decided for the group, they're going to construct that part on their own. They don't have to meet formally over Zoom or in person to decide this. You can create the Google Doc and leave comments for each other if you want to talk that way. I've seen groups do that. You can set up a WhatsApp or a GroupMe chat and just text each other back and forth. You can just figure out a different way to understand who is going to do what. And finally, there's other parts of this assignment that you're going to have to decide which one person from the group is going to submit it. You're going to copy and paste it onto Word, Microsoft Word, or the easiest thing is making a copy, or I'm sorry, downloading a copy, right, of a PDF, because a PDF will lock in all of your design elements in a pretty way, so it can't be shifted around when it's downloaded by somebody else. Anyway, so once you're done, download a copy. Dave's going to submit it, and we're confident that Dave will do it at the day and time the group designated. Before that, they decided that Andretti is going to proofread the entire submission. They decided that Tanya is going to be responsible for making sure that it looks like a memo or a business letter or an email, and that it doesn't look like a Google Doc. It doesn't look like a composition essay. After all that is done, return to the submission portal, whichever one person is responsible for that, and upload it here. Things about the group checklist and the group due date, more detail is on the assignment page for you. If you want to read up more about that, knowing that this assignment will not be accepted late, and I will grade the assignment using a rubric, so you should look that over before you submit as well. Finally, let's review the last thing that is due on Sunday of week 2, which is the rough draft of project 1. So project 1, choosing your scenario. We've talked about that at great length. You either chose scenario 1 or scenario 2 or scenario 3. And you know which one you chose already because you created an outline. And maybe you're not so sure about your document type, so you review this link that I showed you in the video lecture that gives you some ideas about commonalities for emails, letters, or memos. And that might help you. And then finally, you review these steps to completing your submission, and you open up your go-to document for this class that already has a space for your password, knowing that this week it's physical. You don't have to do all caps. You can, I don't care. And furthermore, you labeled the scenario number, so I clearly can tell which one you're planning on responding to. And you label each one of your document choices. It can be a memo and a letter, or maybe email, memo, whichever permutation, as long as you don't do memo, or email, or letter. Each document can be on a new page. Like you see, I've separated each one. You don't have to do it. It just makes it easier. Additionally, tell me how you're going to send your document. So PDF via email, maybe for the memos, letter response, maybe same way. Tell me how you're going to get these documents to these people. If it's an email, you don't need to tell me how you're getting that to your audience because it's implied. It's an email. However, with a memo or a letter, there are other options like printout and circulating at a meeting. I've seen some people do. For a letter, there's other options besides PDF via email. There's certified mail, depending on the audience purpose and situation. But certified mail, although it adds to some ethos, to some credibility to receive something via certified mail, it might also slow down whatever business correspondence you have going on because you have to wait for them to get it in the mail. So you make sure all of that is adhered to in your draft. And instead of bullet points, because this is a rough draft, this is not an outline. Instead of bullet points, you actually have the body of your memo filled out with full sentences, your problem solving, professionalism, and goodwill there. And additionally, if it is a letter or email or a memo, you're thinking about some design aspects. You're thinking about where the addresses are going to go, and you're filling in some fake addresses at the top. Or with a memo, you're remembering that memos have headers, not F headers. They have headers in the left-hand corner. And what does that header look like? And sometimes they even have they have a line at the top. I don't know if it'll do it for me. They have like a line of separation before the memo begins. It's kind of like a staple of a memo, or an email will have a subject line or to and from, and then a subject line. So think about those things, and it doesn't have to look prettier than that. But I want to see, yes, you have a response, but you're also thinking about a little bit, what will that memo or letter actually need to look like for design features without getting fancy, because this is a rough draft. So you've done all of that, you save it as a PDF, not only for this class, but in the business world. Saving a document as a PDF is your best bet because, like I already mentioned, it's going to lock in your design elements, because different people are going to download this document. And if you save it as a docx or a doc or whatever, the design elements are going to shift because that person's going to have a different version of Microsoft Word, or they're going to have an Apple and you didn't. But a PDF is universal, and it just bolsters that ethos. It looks more professional. Everything is going to just look great. Lastly, review more of my expectations and know that you're uploading it to USF Rights. And if you have issues with USF Rights, review these tech help steps. And then you want to see how I'm going to grade the assignment. You can review the rubric. And the document also reminds you that I need to fix this because you guys are an online class. Reminds you that peer review is coming up in week 4. So you should post your draft to the forum for week 4. And if you do not post your draft on time for week 4, you will receive a 0 for the peer review assignment. That is it for week 2. If you have any specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.